I found this lawnmower for free after using an app on my phone, and in the last video we got it up and running, well, mostly. The issue I'm having is that the previous owner swapped carbs on it trying to fix it, but they used the wrong one. I don't think they did it on purpose, but instead, it was all they had to use. So here's my dilemma: should I sell it as is or fix it the right way? In today's video, we're going to be looking at this Toro lawnmower. Now the problem with this mower is that I plan on selling it, however there are a few items we need to take care of before I can do that. So in the last video, we found out that the carb that was on here was incomplete and missing a very important part. And sadly, the part that's missing is no longer available, so we had to replace it with a used one, but it's not the right one either. And with the input and motivation from a lot of the viewers, we're going to replace the carb for the right one. So after getting the information we need from the stickers on the mower, we were able to order the new carb and it arrived today. We're also going to be doing some well-needed maintenance on this engine, that way it'll stay working for a really long time. Now one of those items that's most overlooked is checking the valve clearances, which should be kind of interesting since more than likely it's never been done on this engine before. We'll also be sharpening that blade, that way we'll get a better looking cut, especially when we're not bagging the clippings. But before we take the blade off, it's best to run the engine and get the oil good and hot. So it's been running for several minutes, and while the engine is hot, let's see how it starts back up. I'm actually quite surprised that it started back up with a single pull, which tells us that the valve clearances might still be good. However, if you need more than a couple of pulls to start your engine when it's hot, then the valve clearances might need to be looked at. Now you can tell a lot about an engine from the oil that was in it, and this one's telling a story about little to no care, which makes sense from everything we've seen. It's not necessary to do a yearly oil change, but the more you do them, the better it is for the engine. Now if you're curious, taking off the engine cover makes it a whole lot easier to take the carb off, mainly because of the thermostat for the choke bypass. This carb setup is not the most complicated, however it could be a bit confusing to someone who's not familiar with it. This airbox design is also prone to a lot of issues, however this one is holding up just fine. So here's the new carb, and as you can tell, the design is more elegant when compared to the complicated one that they tried to put on here. The newer design took away that huge vacuum actuator and in its place tied the throttle lever to the choke to bypass it when the engine is running. This not only makes the carb assembly smaller, but also reduces the cost in making it. Not to mention reducing the time it takes to install it in the plant that assembles these engines. Just think about this every time you see a new mower at the store. Every design update could also mean reduced quality and reliability too. Now I haven't tried it just yet, but I'm guessing that the engines with the older style choke bypasses could be converted to this style of carb as well. The only problem is that you'd also have to convert the thermostat as well, which could get expensive. Now the older style worked great, and as long as it was doing what it was supposed to do, there's no point in replacing it then. Once the thermostat is back onto the engine, check and make sure that the bypass is working like it should be. And if it's not doing that, you'll have to look back at the video and compare how the linkages are connected. So I didn't get a chance to film this part, but this would be a great time to inspect the fuel line if not replace it altogether. And the reason why I mention it is because this fuel line had collapsed internally and was restricting fuel flow to the carb. The engine on this mower was starting and running just like it should, however after a couple of minutes it was acting like the fuel tank was empty. I also plan on replacing this air filter, but for right now, we'll keep using the old one. So next up is the all-important valve clearance inspection. Now you don't need to do this check very often, but after several years, it's a pretty good idea if you do. If the clearances are off, it could affect how the engine starts and runs. For example, it might start just fine when it's cold, but when it's hot, it could be a real pain to start back up. So here's our first annoying problem, and that is the valve cover is stuck to the engine. But after a couple of persuasive taps, it finally came free, and we find out why it was stuck. So it turns out they used a sealant on the valve cover, but the worst part is that it's hard and not flexible like other brands use. The only good thing I will say about it is that it did leave the other surface practically clean, which is good news. To start our inspection, we'll rotate the engine so that one of the arms is all the way down. while the one we want to check is all the way up and loose. We'll then take our 5 thousandths of an inch feeler gauge and slide it into the clearance between the valve stem and the arm. And surprisingly, what we feel is that the feeler just fits in the clearance, which is what we want it to do. We'll then rotate the engine so that the other arm is all the way up, that way we can check it as well. This time, however, it's a whole different story. Come to find out the feeler is much too loose. But out of morbid curiosity, I'm going to try to find out just how far out of tolerance it is. And what we find is that the 14 thousandths of an inch feeler just barely fits. So to make our adjustments, we need to loosen the smaller jam nut first before we're able to turn the larger adjusting nut. We'll then take our 5 thousandths of an inch feeler and slide it back into the clearance and then turn the adjusting nut until the feeler almost gets stuck. After that, we can then tighten the jam nut to lock in the adjustment. Now that the valve clearances have been inspected and adjusted, we can then replace the valve cover. However, I don't want to use a sealant on the valve cover, and instead I'm choosing to use a gasket. So I made this gasket from a roll of gasket paper that you can order online or you can get from a large auto parts store. If you're having problems starting your mower or you find that it runs poorly, this would be a great time to replace the spark plug as well. But I will let you know that replacing it may not solve your starting problem, but if it doesn't, it means your problem might be more complicated to fix. So we're almost done with the project. There's only a couple more items to address before we try and start the mower. And one of the most important items is adding oil back to the engine and trying not to overfill it. Too much oil in an engine like this one will hurt its ability to properly lubricate all the components inside it. But if you're checking the oil level and it's barely above the full mark, I don't think it's going to hurt it. However, if it's way over the full mark, I'd recommend that you take out some of the oil. And if you don't want to do it that way, then you can pour out all the oil and start over again, just leaving out several ounces this time. So the next item to address is cleaning and lubricating the wheels, that way they'll keep working like they should. Now you can do this as often as you feel like, but once a year seems to be the best time interval. This is also a good idea if your lawnmower has self-propel because it won't put more load on the engine than it needs to. And even if you decide not to apply any lubricants to the axles, just cleaning off the dirt will make it last a lot longer too. And the very last item to address is sharpening and balancing the blade. Having a sharp blade will put less stress on the engine, not to mention it'll make your cut look a whole lot better too. And before we try and start the engine, I would like to show you the fuel filter I installed along with a new fuel line. I do apologize, this part was not planned, but the procedure is not difficult to do. Now there were a couple of pops at the end, but nothing too bad. Let's see how it starts back up when it's hot. Overall, this mower is not that bad considering the kind of life that it's had. Next up, I plan on doing a longer test run of about 30 minutes, and then after that, it should be ready for sale. Now, if you think your mower is too far gone to start doing maintenance to it, you might be right. However, if you start right now, it might keep it running the way it is for a few more years before you have to buy a new one. And if you saw the price for a new mower, whether battery or gasoline, I think you'd want to give it a try. So my question is, do you think it's worth trying to maintain your mower even if it's already way beyond saving? I think it's worth a shot, but only you know what your mower's been through. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.